I was in the park every single morning this past week with the dogs. Knucklehead, the golden retriever. He's the favorite. Sadie, destroyer of worlds, the lab pup. And Artie, the wonder dog, also known as His Royal Highness. These days I walk Knucklehead and Artie together, and then Sadie goes later by herself on account of the fact that she can't keep up with the other two. She doesn't seem to mind, though. The quality time with her daddy is one of her favorite things. But we have all manner of adventures there in the park, mainly having to do with stuff that God needs to show me. And me, a slow learner. No kidding, my old man used to say that I had a head like a flat beer. Although I wondered sometimes if that was more about him than it was about me. I don't know. But you see, just to begin with, I find it most difficult to restrain myself from feeling morally superior to every other person in that park. That's the truth. And so God is kind enough to remind me that in fact, if I am superior in any way at all, it is in my great need of Him. Me being a slow learner, I have this and a great many other lessons to learn in that park. Lessons to absorb about not judging and not condemning and not criticizing. About how even though we all look different on the outside, we're all basically the same on the inside. In that park, I continue to learn that God is perhaps more to be found in nature than in any other place, if only I can develop the eyes to behold Him. And then the dogs help me to remember that the present moment is God's most precious gift to me, and how freely I tend to squander it, fretting over this, worrying about that. The dogs, of course, have no problem living in the present moment, God's holy now. But I'm learning a great many things in the park, which is interesting, if only because I pretty much grew up in that park. Betty, Virginia Park in Shreveport. We live across the street now, but when we were little kids, we were in that park all the time. We used to slide down the big hill on Trayview, right, on pieces of cardboard, right, like a sled. It makes a pretty ineffective sled, but we didn't mind. And then one time we formed a club, the initiation rite of which was to run across that park butt naked at midnight. It wasn't really a club, it was just an excuse. We used to play at the old playground, which used to be on the other side of the pavilion than it is now. And we would spend unknown hours riding up and down in the big drainage ditch on our bicycles. I practiced junior high football in that park in the 7th grade. I was a fullback. And then, when I was in high school, I used to wander over there sometimes at night and talk to God. I actually did that quite often, so you see, nothing's really changed all that much. But come to think of it, high school was not my finest hour. Can I get an amen? Yeah? You know, I got a real big kick out of the King's Tea lady the other day telling us how happy she was to learn that high school didn't necessarily have to go on your permanent record. There is life after high school. Right? Y'all, I couldn't get out of high school fast enough. And believe it or not, part of it had to do with our second reading for this morning. 2 Corinthians 5:17. Therefore, if anyone is in Christ, he is a new creation. The old has passed away. Behold, the new has come. You see, back then I was in a Bible study. No surprise there. And I learned about 2 Corinthians 5:17. And I learned that it was a major theme in the writings of St. Paul. And I learned that it was a major New Testament theme. We are new creatures in Christ. The old has passed away. The new has come. And when I was 17 years old, I believed I believed that with all of my might. I was a new creature in Christ. Yippee! But you see, what I knew was that I was a mess when I was 17 years old. Still am sometimes. But back then I was an unholy mess. Y'all, short and stout does not make it in high school. Raging hormones, insecure, unpopular, longing for that which I knew not, depressed about half the time, just enough attention deficit disorder so I couldn't do well. And oh, did I mention raging hormones? Right? The Bible said I was a new creature in Christ, but I knew that I wasn't, which produced in me a kind of Protestant schizophrenia, which I don't believe I was the only victim, and from which I am still recovering. Isn't that right? Yeah, there's an amen back there for me. But you see, I know something now that I didn't know then. Professor Charles P. Price, one of the great Anglican theologians of the 20th century, Charlie Price, told us in a theology class in about 1981. And what he said was a real revelation to me. He said this. He said, Christians are new creatures in principle. He said we're new creatures in principle. Principle, P-L-E. I looked it up so I knew what I was talking about. You know what it says? In principle as regards fundamentals, but not necessarily regarding details. No kidding. It was the details I was worried about. But I was a new creature in principle. You see. It's a little bit like having a $100 million inheritance that you don't get until you're 60 or 70 or 80. You get a little bit on your 21st birthday. You get a little more when you turn 30. And then on subsequent decades, you get a little more. But you don't get the whole amount, you see, until you grow into it. Until you grow into it. We must grow into our sonship. We must grow into our daughtership. In other words, it takes time for God to make us who we are. You see. Now that was certainly the case with David, wasn't it? In our Old Testament reading, nobody figured it was David. He didn't look the part, he wasn't old enough. But God saw what nobody else could see. Moreover, it's the same with those parables of the seeds in Mark. Get this, the seeds already got everything it needs, only you just can't see it, right? Its future is already determined. Its future is already intact. It just needs to become what it is. And you know what? It's the same with us. Our destiny in God, our future in God is in our DNA, hardwired. It's already there. Like the ugly duckling that becomes the swan, or the caterpillar that becomes the butterfly, it's already there. We can't be anything else. It just has to unfold. Now, we cannot make this happen. The Lord, how we try, right? Only God can make it happen. And that's precisely what God does. Ready? By hook or by crook, one way or the other, the easy way or the hard way, with or without, I'm convinced of this, permission, in this world or the next, God makes us who we are. You know, I put a cartoon up on the bulletin board in the parlor about 5 years ago. I thought it was really profound. Subsequently, nobody has said anything to me about it. And so I'm going to tell you about it now. It's a takeoff on that old poem about footprints in the sand, you know, when you're reviewing your life. And Jesus says to the guy, he says, you see, when your footprints disappear, that's when I carried you. And the guy says, oh, that's great, Lord. But he says, what's that long, deep trench? And Jesus said, oh, that's when I dragged you kicking and screaming. Right? You may well believe, listen guys, this is so important. You may well believe that in the final analysis, That is how most of us will get into the kingdom. Kicking and screaming. You see, God does all the work, and He uses the stuff of our lives to do it. But here's the secret. Here's the thing that most people miss. He doesn't use the stuff that we think He ought to use. He doesn't use the stuff we're proud of. He doesn't use the good stuff. He doesn't use our successes and our accomplishments and our achievements. Oh, what a good boy am I. He doesn't use that stuff. He doesn't. It's fine, but He doesn't need that stuff. He uses the bad stuff. Now, this is the fundamental paradox of Christianity. He uses the stuff that we're ashamed of. He uses the stuff that we're afraid of. He uses the stuff that we just do not think about. Our hurts and our sorrows, big or small. Our mistakes, that is, sins. Our failures, our hurt feelings and broken hearts, the tragedies of our lives. And our challenges, He uses those as well. The things we just assume not do, but we go ahead and do them. The things that we're afraid of, but we endure them anyway. All those things are worth something to God. Nothing is wasted. Nothing. He uses it all to make us who we are. So you see, you can rejoice when the in-laws come to stay. Right? Y'all, the old saying is true. If it doesn't kill us, it makes us stronger. It is true. It is true. You may or may not believe this, but I am currently reading a book that was written by an 18th century Jesuit contemplative priest. I do that work so that you don't have to, right? His name is Jean-Pierre de Caussade, and he writes something that's absolutely brilliant. Listen to this. He says, everything succeeds and turns out for the best in God's hand, and it is through what distresses us the most that He contrives and accomplishes His highest designs. It is through what distresses us the most that He gets us into the kingdom of heaven. Isn't that neat? Is that good news? Yeah. Nothing is wasted. Nothing is for nothing. Day by day, hour by hour, minute by minute, with or without our consent, God is making us who we are.